The Rebbe was discussing the two different Rosh Chodesh. We have the Rosh Hashanah of the Hanhoga Tivis of the natural, and then we have Rosh Hashanah for the miraculous, which is in the month of ניסן. And the Rebbe explains now that the Yidden get the Hanhoga Nisis through Avodah. In other words, the natural Hanhoga, that's all the time. But when do we get the Hanhoga Nisis? For that, you have to work. So let's look inside, continue over here. So he says, Vihine Gimel, Vihine Hachiluk Shebein Hanhoga Tivis Tishrei Lanhoga Nisis Nisan. The difference between the natural conduct and the miraculous conduct. Move on, Al Pi Maimer Razal. We can understand it based on our saying of our sages. So it says that Kishabochar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ba'ilonoi Kavei Be'rosh Chadoshim Vishonim. When Hashem chose his world, meaning when he created the world, he set up the head of the month and the head of the year. So it was set up, that was from creation. But then, Umishabochar B'Yakov Ubonov, once the Eibishter chose Yaakov and his sons, Kavalahem Rosh Chodesh HaGeula. Then he set up for them a Rosh Chodesh, ahead of a month of redemption. Which means that the natural way was the way it was created. That is, then the Yidden come around, and then we get the new Hanhoga of Rosh Chodesh Elul. Hainush Hanhoga Tivis Hanhoga Shekova Kodesh Baruch Hu Ba'ilamoi Shetiya Bitmidis. The natural Hanhoga is the conduct that the Eibishter made the world should be all the time, L'loi hefsek, without interruption. There is always the Hanhoga, natural Hanhoga. Masha'en kein Hanhoga nisis, as opposed to the miraculous conduct, shehi ba'oifun shel chidush, that's in the way of a novelty, that's a change of nature, is kishura im Yaakov ubonov. That is connected, that is tied to Yaakov and his sons. They bring about the Anhoga Nisis. Anhoga Tivis is naturally in the world, and Yaakov ubonov bring about the miraculous Anhoga. Sheham shechoso he av yidei avidosom shel Yisrael. How do we bring down that miraculous conduct, the beyond nature way of conduct in the world from Hashem, is through the avodah of the Yidden that they do b'koyach atzmam dafke. They do with their own koyach, because the Anhoga Tivis, the natural, that comes from the Eibishter. That's how the Eibishter created the world. But Yaakov Uvonov, when he chose them, they bring down through their avodah with their own koyach, not that it comes from above, but the Yidden, they influence and they bring down the Anhoganis. Okay, Mudgash b'Yitzias Mitzrayim, as emphasized in the Exodus of Egypt. Shehoiso b'zchus dam Pesach v'dam Mila. That came in the merit of the blood of the Korban Pesach and the blood of the Korban of the circumcision Milah. The pasuk says that the Yidden didn't have any mitzvah, so they needed, in order to merit Yitzias Mitzrayim, which was on Hogan Nisis, they needed mitzvahs, and they needed the Dam Pesach and needed the Dam Milah. So that means that it is the Hamshochem Bilmato that brings down this avoida from the Yidden that brings down Yitzias Mitzrayim, brings down the miraculous conduct. Commercial Kosovo, as the Pasuk says, V'oimar loch, I told you, bidomayi chayi, that you will live, you will get the hamshocha is through your blood. V'oimar loch bidomayi chayi, the two bloods, by your blood you will live, Gomer. And further, also the Pasuk says, V'at erum ve'eria, you were bare and naked, meaning you had no mitzvahs. So they needed mitzvahs, avoida, so for them to get the hanhoged nisis of Yitzias Mitzrayim. But the inyan zeh, so this idea of the avoida, so the actual Dam Pesach and the Dam Mila took place later on. But it started, that took place on the 14th, the 15th, before Dam Pesach. But the idea of the work, that already started on Rosh Chodesh, okay, now, as mentioned earlier, the Rebbe brought down, She'os kiblu la'aseh satzivui v'yichulahem ish gomer, that they accepted that command that the Eibishter said that each one should take that sheep. And therefore, since they accepted it, as the Rebbe brought down before from the Rashi and from the Medrash, that it's considered as if they did it already. Shabozeh mudgesh hatoikif b'avodas b'nai Yisrael. In this, in taking that sheep, the avodah of that avodah that Yidden did, it's emphasized the force, the strength in the service of the Bnei Yisrael. How so? Because the sheep was the Avodah Zorah. Notwithstanding the fact that the sheep was the Avodah Zorah of Mitzrayim, still loy hispalu Bnei Yisrael ma'Mitzrayim. They did not become affected by the Egyptians. They didn't care. The Lokho has said they took the sheep, the Shochtei, the Korban Hashem, to shecht it for Korban Hashem. They're taking the Avodah Zorah of the Mitzrayim and they're shechting it to Hashem. That kind of service, to take a sheep, which is an Avodah Zorah of the Egyptians, and to go ahead and shecht it to Hashem, that's a miraculous kind of avodah. That's a service which is beyond reason to take the Egyptian seh and shecht it and bring it to Hashem. Shezuhi hanhogen nisis beinyan ha'avodah. This is a miraculous conduct in the matter of service, in the work. You're working in a miraculous way. And the Rebbe says, to add that this was even greater while they were in Mitzrayim more than later. That as far as this matter of working in a way, of miraculous way, there is a novelty. It's even more on the Chodesh ניסן, and on the 10th of the month, even Gam Legabe Tezvav ניסן, even if you measure it, what took place on the 15th of ניסן, in which they actually shechted and ate it, Kivan Sheberesh Chodesh ניסן, Hoyu Adayin Begolus Mitzrayim. Because Rish Chodesh ניסן, the Yidden were still in the exile of Egypt. The Afopikendo Hispalu Meha Mitzrim Chul, and still they did not become impacted by the Egyptians. They didn't care. They didn't let it stop them. And through this avodah in a miraculous way, not considering the Egyptians and doing things beyond taking their avodah zorah shechet Hashem, they impacted Shetiya Gam Hanhoga Milumayla Boifenisi. So also the conduct from above was in a miraculous way. And this is the idea that took place by this is the idea that took place by when the Yidden were taking and getting ready to merit a Yitzias Mitzrayim by working in a miraculous way. The idea is Shalidei Avodah B'koyach Atzmoi Dafke Mamshichim Hamshocha Chadosha Shehi L'maylo Mehamshocha Sheyeshno B'tmidis. That through Avodah with your own koyach, you bring down a new Hamshocha which is higher than the Hamshocha which is always there. And this way, Ki Hamshocha Sheyeshno B'tmidis Hi Mibchinas HaChitzonius Bilvad. The Hamshocha which is always is only in a way of Chitzonius. But when you work with your own force, that's when Mamshichim Mibchinas HaPnimius, then we bring down from the level of the Pnimius. Dalet. Obir Hanya, to explain this idea. The Hine, Af Shegam Ban Hoga Tivis Nikeres Gedulas Avodah. Even though that even in the natural conduct, you can still tell the greatness of Hashem. Because even though it's nature, but the fact, not only can you tell the greatness of Hashem, also in natural conduct, when you look at the natural way, the way Hashem runs the world in a way that it never stops. So what do you see from the fact that every day the world goes, the sun goes up in the east, it sets in the west, things go in a constant way. So not only do you see that it is godly that Hashem is running it, but you can see Nikerum is Gal Ha'inyan Dani Havai L'Shonisi. From this you can see, you can tell, and it's revealed the idea of Hashem did not change, which means it's nature, but the fact that nature keeps on doing the same thing constantly, that tells you that there's no change in Hashem, that this is something which is all the time. And yet, so while we can see Hashem even in the conduct of nature, we can see Hashem in a way that Ani Havayelation, you see that there is no change from the continuous conduct of nature, but nevertheless, Banhogen Nisis Misgalis Dalgen Nilis Yoser, when the Eberster conducts in a miraculous way, so then it's revealed a higher step, which is even higher than the level of Ani Havaya Loishonisi. How so? So he says, so how do we say that? What's the idea? The Mashe Kosuv Ani Havaya Loi Shonisi, when you say I didn't change, so you're talking about a madrege which change is possible. And you're saying Ani Havaya Loi Shonisi. When you say I didn't change, you're talking about a level in which it applies, and there might be an idea that there is change. So you're saying I don't change. That's why you need to reject this, and then you need to say I didn't change. But when you talk about a level which is totally above any changes defined by changes. He's not even defined in a change, to change or not to change. Lo shayich klal loymar lo shenisi. Can't even say I Hashem did not change. When you're talking about the Hanhoga TVs of there, you can say Hashem doesn't change. But when you talk about in the Hanhoga Nisis, it doesn't even apply. He's not even in defined by change or not change. So you can't say that he doesn't change. You can't reject something which is totally on a different level. He gives an example for the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya. To use the language of the Alter Rebbe in Shara Yichud Hamuna. So it says, Oimer al Ezu Chochma Rama V'Amukum. So a person will say about an idea, a chokhmah, which is very high and deep chokhmah, something very profound and very deep chokhmah. So one is going to say, this is such a deep chokhmah, you cannot touch it the hand. It's so deep that you can't touch it. Because it's so deep, it's so deep, the understanding, the grasp here, the idea is so deep that you can't touch it with your hands. Hinei, Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, if somebody says like that, Kol Hashemeya Yitzchak Loi, anybody hears this will laugh at you. What does it mean? You can't, a wisdom, you can't touch or not touch. You can't say it's so deep that you can't touch it. That's not the way to measure a deep wisdom. A wisdom is not measured by touching and not touching. So saying that you can't touch it does not describe at all. It does not give you any idea the depth of what the chokhmah is to tell you that you can't touch it. Because chokhmah has no comparison and it has no connection to the ability to touch it, to the chush, to that quality to be able to feel. It has nothing to do, logic, wisdom with feeling is two separate. That's why it doesn't fit to negate, to reject and say this is a wisdom that you can't touch because touching is not something which applies to seichel, to chokhmah. It's a different thing. So likewise, the Rebbe applies the same idea. Same thing, it doesn't fit to negate and saying it doesn't change when we talk about a level which is totally higher than change. And this is similar to what explained in the response of the Rashba. It's brought down in the Sefer Hachakira L'Tzemach Tzedek. The Pirush HaKosuf, the meaning over there, the Shuvas Rashba explains the pasuk, Va'atahu u'shneisecha lo yutamu. And your years do not finish. So he says, what does it mean that the Eibishter's years do not finish? So we're attributing years to the Eibishter, but we're saying his years don't finish, but as if the Eibishter is in Zman. So he says, Shehakosu, the Rashba says, Medaber, Begeder HaZman, the Pasuk talks about the definition of time, Shehu Bahasogas Ha'odom, Shehu Bal Gavul, which is grasped by a person who is limited. He knows years. So in the understanding, in the grasp of a human, he measures things in years. So he says, Ushnoisecho loy yitomu, your years don't finish, which means in my understanding of time. Shezehu inyan dishnoisecha. Ubegeder hazman, and when we talk about it defined in time, Yesh tzorech, there's a need lishlol v'loymar to negate and to say lo yitom, that they're not finished, because we're talking. If you talk in time, you say, well, you have an endless amount. Years never end. But you can't say so on the level which is totally higher than time. And it gives the example, Kamoi, B'bchinas HaShabbos Shehu L'maylo Mehazman. Shabbos, the 6 days of the week are in the defined in time. Comes Shabbos goes higher than the time. Shalochein, so when Shabbos is higher than the time, the day doesn't continue. So you don't say Shabbos is the 7th day, so Sunday should be the 8th day, it would seem. But then when you come back to Sunday, you say, oh, it's the first day of Shabbos, Hayom Yom Rishon BaShabbos. Because when you go higher than Zman, it is not continuous. So that's why on every Sunday, Emrim Hayom Yom Rishon BaShabbos. What does it mean? It's the first day, but it's not the first day. It's Afa Pisha Avru Kamo Meyes V'Kamo Meyes V'Alofim Avru Kamo V'Kamo Meyes V'Alofim Yomim Me'ez B'Riya Soila. Even though that many hundreds and thousands of days have come down from the creation of the world. So why are we saying this is the first day? Lefi Shebechinas HaShabbos U'L'Maylo Min Hazman L'Gabri. Because Shabbos is higher than the time. So therefore, it's always, with regards to Shabbos, it's always the first day of Shabbos, the second day of Shabbos. And similarly, it's also as far as Rosh Chodesh, which is also B'dugma Shabbos, which means that is a higher level of revelation for that day, for Rosh Chodesh. For Shabbos comes from a place which is higher than Zman. So, B'zehu Shanhoga Tivis, and this is that when we talk about the natural conduct, the way the world is in nature, Shabbat tzarich lil shloil as inyan hashinui. Just like the Rashba says that we have to reject it. When do we have to say days don't finish when we're talking about the gather of Zman? The same thing is also the natural conduct. Shabbat tzarich lishloil as inyan hashinui. Over there, we need to negate, say there's no change. Ani abai lo shenisi is nimsheches mibchinas hachitzonius. This comes from the chitzonius. Masha enken, chitzonius of godliness into the world. Masha enken anhogan nisis, as opposed to the miraculous conduct. Shabolo shayich lishlo lasinyan hashinui. Over there, it doesn't fit to negate that it's not changeable, because it's much higher. Mibchinas hapenimis shel which is penimis, which is higher from the world, totally higher from the world. So from that level, the level of panemius of godliness, comes the level which is higher than Zman, and we don't even have to say Ani Avai L'Shanisi, and that's why the Hanhoga Nisis is in a much higher, greater way than the Hanhoga Tivis. The miraculous conduct is in a higher level than the natural conduct, even the fact that it doesn't change, because this is even higher than change. In order to reach that level, to get the level which is even higher than the Avai L'Shanisi, that comes through the work by your own power. You can bring down that level. The chitzonius comes down milmaila by itself, but you need to work to bring down the Pneumius, to bring down the Anhogenisis. Hine, behold, so what could we do? The pasuk says, if you are righteous, what do you give to Hashem? How could we bring down something? We're giving something to Hashem to bring down the Anhogenisis. What could we do righteous to give to Hashem? We work that is for the need of Hashem to bring down godliness. That's the way the Eibishter set it up. Kamayim Razal, Shakodesh Baruch Hu Amar LeMoshe Hoyo L'chol LeAzreni. The Eibishter said, "You have to help me," meaning he wants to forgive the Eibishter, to be Mamshich Anu Hamshoche. So it has to come Milmata, even though there's nothing we can give Hashem, but this is the Eibishter. You have to help out the Eibishter to bring it down. So that's why Moshe Rabbeinu immediately said, by the Meraglim, he said, increase the Koyach Adnai. That comes from the Avodah Milmata. K'mevur b'drushim ala posik v'ata yigdal no v'goymer. What does it mean? Yigdal no koyach adnai. So you're increasing the koyach adnai. What does it mean? The Mamorim explain. There is the koyach adnai on its own. And through the service of the Yid, you increase the koyach adnai. So Yigdal, meaning that the Yid actually increases at the level of the koyach adnai. How is that so? I mean, what are we doing for the Eibishter? Well, the Maise Yodecha Tichsef. The Eibishter yearns, wants the axe of your hand. The question is, so what are we giving for the Eibishter? How can we do something for the Eibishter? Yes, we know that they didn't add, but how is that? The Eibishter wants your action. The Eibishter yearns the Maise Yodecha. Tichsef Umoloshen Tainug. Tichsef means it's a language of delight. So a constant delight is not the tainug. A tainug comes, there needs to be avoida that brings out the tainug. Occasionally, only through the avoida below with your own power, which is a novelty. That's a tainug. Nasa mitis a tainug lamata. That makes the true lamailo. Nasa mitis a tainug lamailo, brings the true tainug lamailo. And that's why that brings out hamshacha from the pnimis. So the Yid has a task to do. He has to be mamshechit, because that brings down the tainug, because the Eibishter wants maisi yadecha, and that's not all the time. It's not, doesn't come from Hashem alone. That comes when a Yid works. And this is what the sages tell us. So there is Rosh Chodesh and Shonim the way it's created in the world. But when he chose Yaakov and his sons, he set up a Rosh Chodesh of Geulah. What does it mean? The beginning world came by itself. It wasn't mitzad tainug. It wasn't the avoid of the Yidden. It came by itself. Ki chofetz chesed hu. The Eibishter wants kindness, so he created the world. V'loy mitzad avodas adam, and not because the work of the person. The hamshachas came on its own. Ukamesha kosuv. The pasuk says, "Chatchila by creation, v'adam ayin lavid es ha'adam." There was no man to work the ground to be mamshich. Only after the Eibishter created man, Nasa Seder, then the order became the Eid Yavla Min Ha'aretz V'Hishkas Kol Pnei Ha'adama. There needs to be a cloud that comes down from the ground, and that cloud waters the whole earth that it comes down. So, in the beginning, though, it came just from Hashem alone. V'lachein, Afsha Yishavus Mitzad Ki Chofetz Chesed. So even though the Eibishter wants kindness, that means chesed from higher than ishtalshelus. And not only chesed ma'al ishtalshelus, v'ad l'bchinas chofetz chesed k'moshu lifnei hatzimtzum. Even the way chofetz chesed that comes before the tzimtzum, higher than ishtalshelus, higher than the tzimtzum, that is a very high level that creates the world. That was only external. Over there comes the natural hamshacha in a way that it doesn't stop, but it's hanhagativis. It keeps on going. It's from chesed, chofetz chesed. It's lifnat tzimtzum. Shabo mizgalo ha'inyan de'avaya lo'ishanisi. Over there, you can see Aisha did not change in the external level. However, when he chose Yaakov and his son, then you start the avodah with your own power. Through the avodah you impact the light above, which is the Ma'aseh Yedecha Tichseif, that he yearned for your hand. Then we make a tainuk. Then we reach to the pnimis, which is higher than Avi and Shanisi, which is only chitzonius, but we reach through avodah to the level of pnimis. From there comes the miraculous conduct, the Rosh Chodesh of Geula, which is Mishabachar b'Yaakov Abonav. Once the Eibishter created Yaakov and his sons, so over there we have the Hanhoga Nisis, and that's where the Avodah of the Yid comes in, because the Yid, with his Avodah, brings the level of Tainug, and that brings the level of Pnimius, and that is the source for the Hanhoga Nisis. Okay, let's leave it over here, and we'll be mamshech.
Thank you very much. See you next time.
Yeah.